We will stand with India on the war on terror. It simply shows that this kind of hideous incident can happen anywhere in the world against innocent people, and so we stand with India in this time of need.
Welcome back to Hardball. A series of bombs, 8 of them ripped through crowded commuter trains today in Mumbai, the financial capital of India, killing at least 147 people and injuring more than 400 people. NBC News has learned that the terrorist attacks appear to be work of a Kashmir separatist group known as the Army of the Pure. The FBI just released a statement saying that they see no specific or credible threat to the U.S. mass transportation system. But the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI will provide guidance these days, starting now, as always, with state and local representatives. Former Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge serves as Homeland Security Secretary. If you were still on the post, Governor, what would you be thinking now in protecting us?
Well, I think you got to go back and redouble your efforts to make sure that the programs that you put in place before, everybody's mindful not only of the situation that occurred in Mumbai, but we've got to remember it was Madrid, it was London, it was sarin gas in Japan in the 80s. But frankly, they're working very, very hard on the technology of detection. They've got, ironically, a pilot program going this month in the port of New Jersey and New York with regard to explosive technology and some other interesting changes in how we deal with the surveillance at these places. But you know, it's a classic example where you can only add security to a certain level, then you've compromised the economic benefit of having a mass transit system.
How do you stop a guy or a woman from getting on at 42nd Street in New York or in the subway or somewhere in Philly or Chicago or whatever, and just getting on and carrying some plastic, some weapon, some explosive device? It's not metal. It doesn't go through metal. Even if you had a metal detector, could you stop?
Well, Chris, I think you just dramatized a worst-case scenario, the nightmare that local law enforcement and transit officials have. It is one of the most difficult things to detect in this war on terror. Hopefully you get some intelligence to preempt them beforehand, but they're working on some means now to try to identify some explosive surveillance that might work, even some protocols designed to have people watching individuals as they come through. Canine teams are still very, very successful. So between
Can a dog sniffing a crowd like in New York when you have the people coming in right in front of Penn Center there, you know, they come roaring down that escalator. How can a dog pick up the scent from...
They're pretty good. We obviously have too many people, not enough dogs, and we still don't have enough technology. But I think in time, when you take a look at a situation like this, you've got protocols in place. You've got to make sure that they haven't diminished the intensity. We put more non-uniform police on. We've got surveillance situations set up. But Chris, it's the most difficult thing to protect against.
Just in terms of threat level, people tell me that the bad guys know that we have strong defense on our airlines. Luckily, those people really do the job. You can see them at the airport. They're very conscientious about checking luggage, etc., and our own personal possessions. But we have soft targets out there: movie theaters, subways. So do you think they're more likely to go after those targets than after iconic targets like that you could hit with an airplane?
Well, I suspect as we see what's evolving around the world, you still probably have bin Laden and al-Qaeda thinking more strategically about a big incident. But as you see more and more of these groups having maybe just an aspirational connection to bin Laden and al-Qaeda, maybe not the strategic direction, but the franchising. Yeah, the franchising of some of these jihadists, I think those are the kinds of incidents you have to be most concerned about because, frankly, the material is easy to get. They're some of the most difficult to detect. And as we've seen, that's a device they've employed around the world rather successfully, particularly on mass transit.
But in this case, just so nobody goes thinking that we're next, the Kashmir issue has been an issue in India. As you said before, we went on between India and Pakistan since partition in '47. Exactly so this fight over that isn't our fight, is it?
No, I don't think it's our fight, but once again, we have to remember, it's a reminder, though, that terrorism is a tactic, and al-Qaeda has used it very successfully, and these separatist militants have used it tragically and successfully today in India.
Let's change the page, turn the page to politics. The November elections are coming up. We've got a big election in the Democratic primary in Connecticut coming up in August. Is the war going to dominate these elections? The war in Iraq.
I think it's pretty clear from what you hear from the leaders of both parties that they both have this view that it should dominate. Obviously, the Democrats are. You hear that we shouldn't be wrong war, wrong time. No means of identifying when we're going to get out under what circumstances. And the Republicans talk very specifically about the progress that's been made and accuse the Democrats of trying to cut and run. So I think whether they want to or not, both party leaders and both parties seem to be focused focused on it as a critical mass around which a lot
Let
of
me ask you about
campaigns
two
are involved.
Pennsylvanians who are very much different in their politics. Rick Santorum's in big trouble, 18 points behind. He's been reelected very successfully in the past. 18 points now, down from his Democratic opponent, Bob Casey. What's going on there?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's 18. I've heard different polls. I've heard them in single digits. But the bottom line, I think at the end of the day, this has happened to Casey before. He's got a big lead going into final elections. It evaporates in the last week or two. I think Rick is a tireless campaigner. He's very, very specific.
So you think Santorum can win this election in the end?
Absolutely. I think it'll be a close election, but I think Rick wins.
The other personality in Pennsylvania I find fascinating is Jack Murtha.
Yep.
I watched him for years up on the Hill when I worked up there for TIP. He was a military guy. He was a G.I. Joe, a combat veteran like you of Vietnam, a working class guy like you used to be. What happened to this guy? Why is he such a strong voice against this war? What do you think clicked there?
I think it's very personal to him. He's a great friend of mine. I've admired him for a long time. I just think those daily visits to Walter Reed, his own experience in combat, something happened inside that he said, it's time for us to move. Let's articulate a posture to get out. And I think at the end of the day, I still think he'd like to find a way for us to get out of there honorably and not undermine the progress we've made. But for the time being, I think it's a very personal and very emotional thing for Colonel Jack Murtha.
Pennsylvania is an interesting state. You notice the guys like you come on here and pat to me. You don't trash the other side. It's very interesting. It's a purple state. Anyway, thank you, Governor Tom Ridge. Up next, hardballers.